Okay, we are live. It doesn't know what to do with color shirt. Okay. We have hot chocolate. Welcome, welcome. Just going to give it a couple more minutes since I didn't have this one pre-set up. But we're going to be talking about, or not. I don't know. Do I want to sit up or not? I guess. How does this look without this? Good enough. One of the lights is very annoying because it's right in my face. So, the topic for today is gun control stupidity, for lack of a better term. The main topic is the New York law that just passed, and just the whole mentality behind this stuff, and the lack of understanding about what they're doing. Because, for example, they're using the shooter as an excuse for their new law, yet the law wouldn't have stopped that shooter. It didn't match up. For example, they were talking about the fact that we're banning body armor. No, you're banning soft body armor vests, meaning you're stopping people from wearing the armor that you're at least going to have a chance of getting through. But even with that, let's talk about that. Body armor is not an offensive weapon. Body armor is not anything. It is literally a life-saving device. Are we banning, seatbelts, life preservers? If I beat you over the head with a life preserver, is that now going to get banned? Just the whole idea of saying that unless you're a cop, you can't have this thing that protects you. I don't understand how that can even have a prayer holding up in court. Like, it was bad enough that their previous law was about wearing it. You couldn't wear it in public. But to even not be able to own it, how do you justify that in court? Hi, here's this thing that protects somebody from when they're attacked from injury. And we think these are very important for law enforcement who deal with criminals. So the person the criminal attacked that caused the police officer to have to go after them can't have one, but the police officer needs to have one. Now, I know they usually quote statistics about, the risks to police officers versus the average civilian. But that ignores the fact that the police officer very rarely gets involved until after one of those same civilians was attacked. And very often, multiple civilians have been attacked over, minutes, days, hours, weeks, years before the police get involved with that particular criminal. So, yeah, on an individual person-to-person basis, police are more likely to actually need that body armor. I'm not saying they don't. But what I'm saying is that the general public, on average, meaning as a group, has more of a need because the police don't interact with all the criminals, but the general public does. If you didn't have criminals committing acts on the general public, you wouldn't need the police. If the police interacted with all of them, they would probably have cut crime down drastically, right? Which, I'm working on a video on the topic, but the general idea of, you need to just let the police do their job, and you don't need that, the police do. That whole concept is completely flawed. If that was true, we wouldn't have crime. It wouldn't exist. You wouldn't even need the police. Because if the police could stop crime from happening, it would have happened, right? We have a country with freedoms. We have a country where the general public is not servants, for lack of a better term, to the government. The police have to operate within a certain framework. They're not allowed to just randomly, throw people in jail. That's how you get lawsuits and other issues when they do it. So that means that criminals will commit acts of violence. It will happen. It's unavoidable. It is part of living in a free society that some people will choose to do bad things. And the advantage of living in a free society is that each individual is entitled to protect themselves. They are not restricted from doing so, except that we're constantly making it harder and harder and harder for people to do so. I mean, things are written directly into our Declaration of Independence, our Constitution, our Bill of Rights, right on through from the Federalist Papers and so on. The very concept of our country is that the people are endowed with certain rights by our Creator. And I'm not a religious person, so I look at it as these are natural rights. As a human, you are entitled, gets into other people that interpret it differently, but you are entitled to certain things. And those don't change just because of your government. Your government doesn't actually get to say whether you have them or not. It can try, and certainly plenty of governments over the history of our world, not our nation, our world, have attempted to and succeeded to various extents. Our nation was founded on the idea that our government is not allowed. These are the lines. These are things that you are allowed to do, nothing else. And they routinely go way past that. But at the core, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. And they don't mean that you get to do whatever you want. Pursuit of happiness doesn't mean you can do anything. It means that essentially you are allowed to pursue the career you would like. You are allowed to interact with people of your choosing. You are not restricted by the government into a second-class citizen because you, for example, were not born a noble. You are not part of the peerage, right? No, that doesn't come into play here. And that you are entitled to your life. That you are, and that doesn't mean just from the government. That means that you are responsible for your own life. That you are allowed to defend that life. That you are allowed to value that life. That it is not something to be casually dismissed. And when you tell a population that you're not allowed to defend yourself, that you have to rely on us, this government entity that is regularly failing to do that job. And this is not a criticism of the police. What we're asking them to do in that context is physically impossible, right? If you're saying that the police should be able to stop all violent crime, even in Nazi Germany, they did not achieve this. Even in Soviet Russia, this is not an achievable goal, even if you have massive police powers, secret police, this is not achievable. So you're asking people to say, I'm giving up my right to life to let you handle that. And that is not okay. That's not how our country works. That is not how our system of government operates. And when a government entity does that, you have to ask yourself, Are they a legitimate entity? I mean, I'm not being, insurrectionist here. I'm not promoting, destroying New York State or anything. Just saying that if a government entity is denying people one of the fundamental rights written into our government system, do they have that right? Are they still a legitimate body? Or have they basically declared themselves unconstitutional? Extra constitutional, I guess, would be the correct term. And to me, the answer is yes. That they have removed themselves from the system of government that they are supposed to be representing. And they need to be removed. They need to be voted out of office immediately. The next available vote for any of those individuals, gone. I don't care who replaces them. That's up to you locally. What I'm saying is that the individuals who are voting for this stuff, who are signing these laws, need to be removed. They need to be voted out of office the next available moment. If there's a special recall available, start. If not, the next election. If you want to leave a Democrat, you want to leave a Republican, you want to leave I don't care what party it was, because plenty of Republicans voted for this shit. Like, this is not a left-right only, like, sided thing for the most part. This is government believing that they can do what they want. What else do we have? And let me pull up my notes, because we're basically we're talking about the stuff that I was working on a video for, and I may just skip the video, and it is what it is. So we've all heard that phrase, like, all right, when seconds count, the police are minutes away. And keep in mind, this whole thing, I'm going to say it one more time. This is not anti-cop. This is not bashing the cops. This is just reality. No matter how good they are at their job, no matter how hard they try, no matter how much funding you give them, okay? Like, this is not a criticism of the police. It is simply reality of life. Unless you have one-to-one police presence, meaning, I'm sitting here and there's a cop, right there waiting for somebody to come through my door and, do a home invasion. I'm still responsible for me, right? I'm still responsible for my own safety. So I put this in the same category as fire. Yeah, I guess that's the easiest way to do it, right? So counting on the police to save you from a criminal, right, is roughly equivalent to counting on the fire department to save you from a fire. And I don't mean you personally in the fire department's case, but to save your property from a fire. And then saying, well, the fire department exists, so I don't need smoke detectors. I don't need to dial 911. I don't need a fire extinguisher. I don't need to have sprinklers. I don't need to understand how to put a fire out, because the fire department will do that for me, right? No, which is why we have all sorts of building codes, regulations, training, reminders to check your smoke detectors every year. Like, this is a thing. They will not be there instantly. It's going to take time for them to arrive. Even if you call the second there was a fire, you've got a little tiny, oil fire at your stove, and you've called the cops or the fire department. I mean, do they show up in the next 30 seconds, or is your ceiling now on fire, right? If you're stupid, did you now, pick up that pan and move it and spread that oil across your counter and your floor is now on fire. Your cabinets are now on fire. If you don't know how, and you aren't equipped to deal with the immediate emergency, it gets bigger. And the state organization, meaning whatever the organization is, the government organization, fire department, police, DNR, their job got harder. It's very easy for the police to come and take a report and go, well, Mr. Criminal, you clearly walked into the wrong house. And assuming you're alive, we're here to take you to jail. If not, we're here to take you to the morgue and fill out paperwork. It is very difficult for the police to put your life back together after your wife and daughter have been raped and murdered in front of you, and you are sitting there with broken legs and arms, and your life is destroyed. That is not the solution, right? The police showed up an hour later, and you might say, well, our police response time is X. I have called the police in a major metropolitan area when I was about 3 blocks from a police department with a major issue, and I had to call back half an hour later. Yeah, I've gotten put on hold. They never asked what the issue was. I literally got to an emergency operator and got put on hold. So yeah, if you're counting on the police to save you, you're probably dead. Now, don't get me wrong. I know for a fact that they were extremely understaffed and overworked at that point. But that doesn't change the fact that I did not get an officer there for almost 2 hours. It was over. There wasn't even paperwork to do. It was at that point an insurance claim. This is downtown Hartford. Like, if you live in the country, what are you going to do? If you live in the suburbs where the police station is 10 minutes away, if you're lucky, what are you going to do? Even if they've got an instant response time, it's 10 minutes, right? That assumes you can call the cops. If I've got 2 choices, pull a gun or hunt for my cell phone, I'm going to pull the gun, right? Like, if my life is in danger, the cell phone comes second. So in one instance, we have regulations specifically to make people less reliant on a government entity so that the government entity can better handle the situation that does arise. And in the other, we're saying, hey, this one's a more direct threat to your life, but you need to let us handle it entirely. You're not allowed. We're going to take away your ability to handle that situation, to protect your own life. And the really ridiculous part of this is that the people most commonly attempting to do this, or even doing this in the case of New York now, generally live in areas, govern areas with extremely high crime, extremely high violent crime, high police forces, big active police forces, and they all live defended by armed guards 24/7. But we're not allowed. The average person is not allowed. So yeah, it's a little fucked up, right? Now, let's get into something. I said earlier that I was not promoting like insurrection or a coup or anything like that in New York State, and I'm still not. However, I am going to theorize on how one might occur. And this is based off my experience living in New York, living in Connecticut, knowing many people in those areas who basically are fed up with those governments and how they operate and the treatment as slaves, not citizens. The governments in those areas very often, particularly in Eastern New York and Connecticut, they are not serving you. As far as they're concerned, you're serving them. And unless you're one of their, fellow elites. And what I see happening, this is a prediction. If that law, the new armor law and the gun laws don't change, somebody will get arrested having defended their own life okay, from a criminal. They will be attacked, possibly family member is dead. They will have done everything right from a moral, ethical, and constitutional standpoint. And they will be arrested, charged, convicted, and put in prison with a hefty sentence. And then their friends, neighbors, and countrymen will get them out of prison and remove the people who put them there from this life. Because at some point, people are going to go, we've had enough. This person was the victim, and you have now destroyed them. And we are not okay with that. And my leg is asleep. And I think that this is almost inevitable. The exact play, on the fellow countryman side is flexible. I could see it being something like, well, we're taking the courthouse long enough to take this person out, and you can all go to hell. Who knows? Whatever happens. But the patience with these things has run out. People have swallowed it over and over and over when the incremental laws have been passed, the further restrictions, the removal of our rights as humans. And I think that it's gotten to the point where when somebody is going to go to jail for simply owning soft body armor and defending their own life, defending their family members, they did nothing else wrong. This is not somebody who was committing a criminal act otherwise. When somebody goes to jail for that, who was otherwise doing everything right, this is not going to be a case of, some scumbag doing this, and they just also get screwed over by the cops and the DA. I am talking about somebody who was an otherwise completely upstanding citizen, and because of something bad that happened to them, they are now interacting with the police, and they become the criminal in the eyes of the police and the prosecutor. And the judge does not basically use that case to get rid of those laws. The people will. And the worry, and I mean, this has been the concern for decades now, is that once that starts, how does it stop? Because the government, as it exists now, won't let that stand. They will not be able to accept that they just got told off, and they will double down. And what will people do? I know what most of the people I know in that position are going to do. And the answer is hold their ground. They are not going to go on the offensive, but they are also not going to meekly surrender and get arrested. And they very well may continue with, if you are actively involved in the passage of such laws and the enforcement in them, you are essentially a traitor and you will be attacked. But they're not going to be looking to do a violent overthrow of the government. It is going to be very specific, because the people that are motivated this way, the people who are that incensed, these are not criminals in the normal sense. These are not people who are flying off the handle. They are not having a temper tantrum. These are people who have tried year after year after year after year to handle this legitimately. These are people who really don't want this to happen. They don't want this to grow into something else. They want as little of it as possible. And I think that's the key, is that this isn't like the Black Lives Matter riots. This is not like the Antifa riots where the goal is the violence. The goal is the attention. These are people who would just like to go back to their lives. They just want to be left alone. They don't want some government entity telling them how to live their life. They don't want some government entity telling them that they are not allowed to defend themselves from criminals. And, if the criminals wear a suit and call themselves congressmen, you know, um, which is this is how New York is. And it's very weird to me because I grew up in far Western New York. Far Western New York is a very different place from Eastern New York. Very, very different. Down here in Texas, I routinely compare where I live now with Western New York. Very similar mentality, very similar attitudes. It is very much the same mindset that just stay out of the way. Less government interference, mind your own damn business, we will take care of ourselves. And governments that are remote from that population doing things that population does not approve of, which creates that scenario of at some point the population says we are not represented. Remember, this is how our revolution started. We are not being represented. You are doing unto us, taxing us, and we are not represented. Is it the same degree as back? No. But at some point, people go, we've tried, and we're watching you destroy what we value year after year after year. And we look around and we're not alone. That's the key. There's a sort of joking phrase, like when you think the event, whether it's shift fan, revolution, whatever, has started, get all your gear on, go out your front door and look around. And if you're the only idiot standing on your front step with a bunch of gear on, you're wrong. Go back inside, put it away. And I think it's as much of a joke and a meme as it is, it's also true. When you look around, if you are the only person ranting about something, you're probably wrong, right? At least by local standards. You may be right by another area, but your local opinion is not the same as yours. On the other hand, if your opinion, and you are not in a closed group, right? I mean, you are not in like a little insular group. If you're in a general area that agrees with you, you're probably not wrong. Now, that doesn't mean that everybody's going to agree. That doesn't mean the government's going to agree. But you, at least as a group, as a region, have an opinion. Not just you personally, where things have happened that have gotten you all worked up. Because let's face it, it happens. You see some pieces of news and something happens in your life and so on and so forth, and you're very charged up. But that doesn't mean that everybody is. That doesn't mean that you're not just getting charged up by specific things and that in general, it's really not that bad. But for example, yesterday on my way to work, I was behind a car with a Texit sticker on the back. That's it. Texit, as in Brexit. And it's not the first car I've seen with one. This was not a bumper sticker. This was a little square sticker with the organization website address at the bottom. And I see this shit all the time. A common topic of conversation in this area of Texas, at least, I can't speak for other areas, is do we really need the other states? Are we better off in this union as it's going? Like, not historically, not the ideal, but the current state of affairs. Would we be better off exiting? Back to the Republic of Texas, for example. And nobody realistically thinks it would just be the Republic of Texas. Like, it would be most likely, the general opinion matches what I've long thought. If you basically take the edge of Texas, or maybe even part of Louisiana, and then all the way over to the edge of Texas, straight up and down, maybe a few wiggles here or there, But you kind of cut out a section of the country in the middle that thinks pretty similarly. Um, and then the two coasts could remain their own country. Um, but that center portion is literally just going to go back to our original founding documents and probably edit out 90% of the current laws, federal laws, federals. The key is that people are not necessarily that pissed off with their state government. Their problem is that the federal government is doing things they don't approve of, but their state doesn't really get a say. It's, oh, we've got to vote, but it's not enough to do any good. There's states that have basically gotten enough power that they get to decide. And Washington in general has become very much its own animal. So what do? When you're in that scenario, you have to be realistic about it. The federal government's not going to just say, well, it was nice knowing you, bye. So obviously that's an issue, right? I mean, this is not, you don't just casually have, honestly, I don't think it would be a civil war. I think it would literally be a diplomatic resolution. It would be, hey, all of these states have discussed it at a governor level, and we would like to have a vote on our exit. And the populations vote and decide, are we exiting? And that gets brought to Congress. That we would like to go back to these laws, this framework. We would like to leave. Or more accurately, we would like to be the United States of America, and you can be whatever you think you are, because you are not adhering to the founding principles and documents of the United States of America, which we would like to maintain. And I have no idea how that would go. This is not something I am an expert in at all. Not my thing. And I don't imagine it would be smooth in the least. I think that it would be a giant clusterfuck. But I think that the fact that that is a common issue for discussion, and meanwhile, Washington is doing things like they have been, New York is doing things like they have been, shows the disconnect that a huge chunk of the nation is here, and they're doing shit way over here that affects everybody, and think it's okay, that they think this is that they've got a mandate for this. Meanwhile, half the country is going, we don't think you were legitimately elected. And we have proof that at the very least, you might not have been. Like we can't prove that you didn't win the vote, but we can prove that there was fraud, large scale fraud. But we can't even get people to pay attention to that, which makes us even more suspicious. And meanwhile, you continue to do things that make this worse. Well, you say that you're trying to unify and rebuild. And I just don't know. I think that it's a mess. I think that at some point they have pushed far enough that they have created the environment where, what cat? What? She probably wants more food in her bowl. I didn't actually give her dinner. She had food in the bowl, so I just left it. I'm like rubbing her with my foot. I'm giving her like a foot massage in reverse. I'm the foot. She's getting the massage. They've created this condition where people no longer trust the government at all. Like if you ask the average person, do you trust the federal government? No. Most people would say no. It doesn't mean they're anti-government at all. But do you trust them? No. Do you trust the police? I mean, as an individual, generally, as an organization, not really. And this isn't specifically the police, but it's more the justice system. It's the police system, it's the DA, it's the individual prosecutors, it's the judges. Do you trust that system to give you justice? And the answer is no, because we watch over and over as this system fails. And it's not that the system itself is wrong. It's the implementation. It's how it exists now. And this is something that if you push far enough and people vote and say, we're changing who's there, great. That's how you fix it. But if they vote and then go, well, I mean, my vote literally got negated by a whole bunch of dead people. How many times can that happen before people say, well, I've got another option? And in this country, that is literally enshrined in our Bill of Rights. That is, it's not a anti-government, anti-constitutional thing. It is literally part of our founding system that at the end of the day, the population of our country are the real people in charge. The population rules, not the government. The government just administers. They are there to handle the paperwork, so to speak. They are there to interact with foreign nations. But they do so at our pleasure. And when it's not our pleasure, they can be removed. And if voting doesn't work, there is literally something built into our Bill of Rights to fix that. And I feel like that they've forgotten, that they feel like they've gotten enough power that they can ignore that or try to negate that, which is where we are now and why it's so dangerous, because obviously the goal is to avoid that level of conflict. The goal is to keep it where somebody in office is doing something you don't like, you vote them out. And does it work the first time? Does their replacement behave? No, usually not. Vote them out too. Next guy, next gal, whoever, over and over and over. If you replace Congress every 4 years, every 6 years, until the people who are there are not career politicians and understand that if they're not actually serving the will of the people, if they're not actually representing their population, they will be removed too. They are not there to serve their own interests. They are there to serve their constituents. And I've said this in prior videos. I really think that is the solution, that we can't have this voter inertia where, well, they're not that bad, we'll leave them in. No, if you are not absolutely happy with the person in office, kick them out. Repeat, rinse and repeat over and over and over. Because at some point, people will stop being politicians first and representing people second. They will stop looking out for their own interests, and we will have people who are not there to make a career out of this, but they're there because they feel like they need to. They need to serve. They need to do their duty to their country and then leave. Get in, do what they were elected to do. And if that takes 1, 2, 3 terms, whatever it is, and then leave. How do you set term limits when half of Congress has been there for almost their entire adult life? When congressmen and women are like second generation and have literally never had a regular job, they've always been in government office, how do you get them to set a term limit? That's not in their interest. They are absolutely not going to go along with that. They would immediately be removed, right? Like, why would they do that? They just keep voting themselves nicer packages, nicer retirement packages, and then never retire. But whatever. You need to replace them with people who don't view it as a long-term permanent position. And then once you've gotten to the point where most of the people there are not planning to stay, term limits are a thing. You can absolutely get that passed when 75% of Congress is on their second term at most, first or second term. and doesn't plan to run for re-election, why wouldn't they pass it if their constituents are saying, we want this? I could be wrong. I mean, but if you take a referendum in your state or in your district and say, is this what you want? I mean, I don't understand why that's not a thing. I'm not saying we should go to a straight up democracy where the people vote for everything. That is not a functional system either. But a congressperson can absolutely take polling in their state and go, do people want term limits in Congress? How should I be pushing this? Should I not be pushing this? What is my population's view on gun control? You know, not what am I being pushed for by my other members of Congress? What does my population in my region think? And then they apply their own intelligence to it. There's a reason we're represented, right? And they look at the whole thing and they go, this is what I'm going to do. And if you don't like it, you don't vote for them the next time. You vote for a replacement. You don't go, well, I mean, he's the incumbent. He's got a better chance than that other party guy. And no, vote them out. And the problem is that if only a small percentage of the population behaves this way, it doesn't work. But I think what we're seeing is that a very large percentage of the population has gotten very fed up over the last few years. I think that the Democrats are about to get slaughtered at the polls. I think that it will be absolutely brutal. But I think that long-term incumbent Republicans will also be very rudely surprised and removed from office because people have just had enough. They're going to look at it and go, you voted for this shit too. And it made my life horrible. It ruined my business. My job was gone. The economy is trashed and I can't get, formula for my kid, so on and so forth. Like, you can only cause so much pain in people's lives before they take notice. Little things, you can get away with a lot. But when it directly and significantly affects somebody's pocketbook, when their ability to purchase goods that are common everyday household items is severely affected, they notice and they get pissed off and they do something about it. They vote. Does anybody have any comments? People keep coming in, people keep leaving. Nobody is saying anything. And I know I'm being a little bit of a pushy bastard tonight. Got myself a little riled up preparing the content for the video that I'm now probably not doing because we put half of it into a live. I may just do the anti-gun lawsuits portion of the video, which means I have to do more research because I only got like 2 minutes worth of content for that, but whatever. Saturday's video might be something very easy to do off the cuff because we just threw out most of what I had for Saturday's video. Okay, so if nobody's got anything, I'm going to call it. I've got other stuff I want to get done, and I need to work on a video, apparently. Been real. I'm probably about to get like 5 YouTube strikes for, calling for anti-government revolutions or something, because they won't care about context or what else I said. They'll pick and choose phrases, right? But whatever. I mean, YouTube has not made me a dime. It just cost me time and money. Patreon, please. Thank you. If you're not a subscriber, please subscribe. I realize that I'm saying this at the end of a 40-minute long video, but it does make a difference. Please subscribe. And honestly, thumbs up, thumbs down, it doesn't matter. Engage, post a comment, something. When you watch one of the videos, let it run in the background. If you're not interested in the video, just let it run in the background while you do something else. That counts. And YouTube keeps track of how long people watch to track interest. So it helps. But please, like anything you can do to help the channel out, We're still growing. It's still doing okay, but it's really, not leaps and bounds, right? Don't quit my day job, so to speak, which is with YouTube. I mean, I'm a long way from that helping out, right? But and then C, thanks for the hot chocolate. And by the way, C was who I thought C was. So anyway, good night all.